I want you to imagine something for a moment. You're sitting there, eyes locked on the screen, watching price move. You see a candle form, then another, then another. Your heart rate shifts with each one. Green candle, you lean in. Red candle, your chest tightens. You tell yourself you're analyzing, you're studying, you're staying informed. But somewhere deep down, beneath all that noise, there's a quiet truth you don't want to face. You're not watching the market. The market is watching you, and what it sees is someone who's forgotten how to be still. This isn't a conversation about discipline. It's not about screen time or productivity hacks. This is about something far more serious. Something that sits beneath the surface of every impulsive decision, every revenge trade, every moment you've sat frozen in front of your charts, unable to pull the trigger or unwilling to let go. We're going to talk about the mental cost of watching every candle. And I mean cost in the truest sense. Because every minute you spend glued to that screen, you're not just losing time. You're losing clarity. You're losing emotional bandwidth. You're losing the part of yourself that can think independently of what price is doing right now. And the strange thing is, most traders don't even realize it's happening. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you sat down, executed a trade based on your plan, and then walked away? Not because you were confident it would work, not because you had some guru-level detachment, but simply because your plan said the work was done. If you can't remember, you're not alone. Most traders live in a state of constant vigilance. They believe that watching equals controlling, that if they look away, something catastrophic will happen. The market will turn against them. They'll miss the move. They'll lose their edge. So they stay. They watch. They refresh. They scroll. They stare at wicks and shadows and volume bars as if somewhere in that visual noise is a secret message meant just for them. But here's what actually happens. The more you watch, the more you see. And the more you see, the more you react. And the more you react, the less you trust the very plan you built when your mind was clear. You start second-guessing. You start interpreting. You start creating meaning out of randomness because your brain cannot sit in front of movement without trying to make sense of it. That's not analysis. That's anxiety dressed up as engagement. And it's costing you more than you think. Because every time you watch a candle form, you're not just observing data. You're feeding your nervous system a signal. You're telling your brain that something urgent is happening, that you need to be ready. That survival depends on your attention right now. And your body responds the way it's designed to. Cortisol rises, heart rate elevates pupils, you enter a low-grade fight-or-flight state, and you stay there 4 hours. This is what I mean by mental cost. You think you're being a serious trader? You think you're staying sharp. But what you're actually doing is training your brain to associate trading with stress. You're conditioning yourself to feel threatened by price movement. And over time, that wears you down in ways you don't consciously notice until it's too late. You become irritable. You lose patience with yourself. You start making decisions just to relieve the tension. You exit winning trades early because holding them feels unbearable. You hold losing trades too long because admitting the loss feels worse than the pain of watching it grow. You're no longer trading the market. You're trading your emotions. And your emotions are trading you. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You might say, but I need to watch. I need to manage my risk. I need to see what's happening so I can adjust. And that sounds reasonable. It sounds responsible. But let me offer you a different perspective. If your trading plan requires constant supervision to work, you don't have a plan. You have a hope. You have a series of loose ideas held together by your willingness to intervene every time something feels off. And that's not sustainable because you can't outfocus the market. You can't outstare randomness. You can't force clarity by sheer presence. What you can do is build a system that doesn't need you hovering over it like a nervous parent. But that requires something most traders resist with everything they have. It requires trust. And trust in this context, doesn't mean blind faith. It doesn't mean hoping for the best or ignoring risk. It means you've done the work ahead of time. You've defined your entry. You've set your stop. You've calculated your position size. You've decided in advance what constitutes invalidation. And then, once the trade is live, you step back. Not because you don't care, but because caring too much, watching too closely, turns you into a liability to your own process. Think about it. When you're standing over every candle, what are you actually looking for? Most of the time, you're looking for confirmation that you were right, or evidence that you might be wrong. You're scanning for signs, patterns, clues, anything that will tell you what to feel. But the market doesn't owe you that. The market doesn't send you signals to soothe your uncertainty. It moves. It fluctuates. It breathes. And most of that movement is noise. Meaningless, random, statistically insignificant noise. But your brain doesn't know that. Your brain sees movement and assigns meaning. It sees a red candle after you bought and interprets it as danger. It sees a green candle and interprets it as validation. And the more you feed it this information, the more it craves it. You become addicted to the feedback loop. Not because it's helpful, but because it's stimulating. And stimulation, in the absence of real progress, becomes its own reward. I got a feel for the market. I stayed on top of things. I was ready in case something happened. But none of that is measurable. None of that is growth. It's just presence without purpose. And over time, that kind of presence doesn't make you sharper. It makes you numb. You stop noticing your own patterns. You stop questioning your own behavior. You accept the exhaustion as part of the game. You tell yourself that if you're not tired, you're not trying hard enough. And that belief, more than anything else, keeps you trapped. Because the truth is, the best traders I've ever worked with aren't the ones who watch the most. They're the ones who've learned to look away. They're the ones who trust their preparation more than their real-time interpretation. They're the ones who understand that clarity comes from distance, not proximity. When you step back, you see the bigger picture. When you're glued to the 1-minute chart, all you see is chaos. Now, let's talk about what's really happening beneath all this. Because the urge to watch every candle isn't really about the market. It's about you. It's about what you're avoiding. It's about the discomfort you feel when you're not in control. And here's the uncomfortable part. You're not in control. You never were. You don't control where price goes. You don't control whether your trade works. You don't control the timing, the speed, the volatility, or the outcome. The only thing you control is your decision to enter, your decision to exit, and your decision about how much you're willing to risk. That's it. Everything else is uncertainty, and uncertainty is terrifying. So you watch, because watching gives you the illusion that you're doing something, that you're managing the situation, that you're staying ahead of the danger. But you're not. You're just marinating in your own anxiety. And the longer you sit there, the more that anxiety seeps into your decision. You start seeing threats that aren't there. You start imagining scenarios that haven't happened. You start reacting to your thoughts about price instead of price itself. And that's when the real damage begins. Because once your emotions take over, your plan becomes irrelevant. You're no longer executing a strategy. You're managing feelings. And feelings, when left unchecked, are terrible traders. So what's the alternative? How do you break this cycle? It starts with awareness. You have to see it for what it is. You have to recognize that the compulsion to watch isn't coming from a place of strength. It's coming from fear. Fear of missing out, fear of being wrong, fear of losing control, fear of what it might mean about you if this trade doesn't work. And once you see that, you can start to question it. You can start to ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of? What do I think will happen if I step away for an hour? What do I believe I'll lose if I'm not watching? Most of the time, the answers reveal something deeper, something that has nothing to do with trading and everything to do with how you relate to uncertainty in your life, how you cope with not knowing, how you handle situations where effort doesn't guarantee outcome. And that's the real work. Not learning a new strategy, not finding a better indicator, but learning to sit with the discomfort of not knowing and not needing to fill that space with action. Because here's what I've learned, both from my own experience and from watching hundreds of traders struggle with this. The ones who succeed aren't the ones who try harder. They're the ones who learn to do less. They're the ones who build a plan they can trust and then honor that trust by stepping back. They check in at logical points. They review their trades after the fact. They study their decision-making with the clarity that only distance can provide. But they don't sit there candle by candle. And because of that, they preserve something precious. They preserve their mental energy. They preserve their objectivity. They preserve the part of themselves that can still think clearly under pressure. You can't do that if you're exhausted. You can't do that if your nervous system is fried from hours of low-grade stress. You can't do that if every trade feels like a battle you have to win right now. So let me say this as clearly as I can. Watching every candle is not dedication. It's a slow erosion of the very qualities you need to succeed. And the sooner you recognize that, the sooner you can start building a relationship with trading that doesn't destroy you in the process. You don't have to prove anything to the market. You don't have to earn the right to step away. You just have to decide that your mental clarity is worth more than the false sense of control that comes from constant observation. And when you make that decision, something shifts. The trades don't feel as heavy. The losses don't cut as deep. The wins don't inflate your ego as much. You start to see trading for what it really is, a game of probabilities played over time, where the quality of your decisions matters far more than the outcome of any single trade. And you can't make quality decisions when you're running on empty. You can't think clearly when your brain is stuck in survival mode. You can't execute with precision when every candle feels like a threat. So you have to learn to let go. Not of the plan, not of the discipline, but of the need to know what happens next, of the need to be present for every tick, of the belief that your attention somehow influences the outcome. It doesn't. The market will do what it does whether you're watching or not. Your trade will hit your target or your stop based on the structure you built, not the intensity of your focus. And your long-term success will come from the aggregate of good decisions made with a clear mind, not from the heroic effort of watching every moment unfold. This is the mental cost of watching every candle. It's not dramatic. It's not obvious. It's the slow, quiet draining of the resource you need most. Your ability to think, your ability to trust, your ability to stay calm in the face of uncertainty. And once that's gone, no strategy in the world will save you. So, if there's one thing I want you to take from this, it's this. Step back. Not because you're giving up, not because you're careless, but because you're serious, because you understand that protecting your mind is the most important trade you'll ever make. And when you do that, when you finally give yourself permission to look away, you might be surprised by what you find. Not chaos, not disaster, but space. Space to breathe. Space to think. Space to become the kind of trader who doesn't need to watch every candle because they've built something stronger. They've built trust in themselves. And that, more than anything else, is what will carry you through. If this resonated with you, take a moment to sit with it. Let it settle. The work begins when you close this video and decide what kind of trader you want to become. I'll see you in the next one.